The story begins with a 20-year-old guy named Will Hunting. He lives in a very poor neighborhood but works at the world's most famous university, MIT. It sounds good, but the truth is, Will doesn't study there. He just cleans the university buildings. One day, while he's cleaning a hallway, he sees a very difficult math problem written on a whiteboard. This problem was written by Professor Gerald Lambeau. He had challenged the entire college that whoever could solve this problem would have their name printed in the university's books and would gain both fame and respect. Will looks closely at the problem and can't stop thinking about it. He thinks about the problem all day, even when he is at the bar with his friends. Suddenly, he leaves his friends and goes straight to his small, old house to spend the entire night solving the problem. He doesn't have a whiteboard at home, so he writes the solution on his bathroom mirror, erasing and trying again. After many hours, he finally solves the problem. A few days later, when he goes to work, he writes the correct answer on the whiteboard while he's cleaning. When Professor Lambeau sees the solution on the board, he is shocked. He can't believe that one of his students solved such a difficult problem so quickly. He becomes desperate to know who this genius is. That same evening, Will is driving around with his friends. They run into some people on the street. One of the guys makes fun of a girl. Will recognizes this guy. He was the same person who used to bully him a lot as a child. Angrily, Will asks his friend to stop the car and, without thinking, gets out and attacks the bully. Will punches him and a fight breaks out between the two groups instantly. Soon, the police arrive. Will's friends try to pull him away to save him, but it's too late. The police arrest Will. The next morning, Professor Lambeau is lecturing his students. Everyone is looking at him because they all want to know who solved the difficult problem, but no one in the class answers. The professor, feeling a bit down, says that if someone has solved the last problem, he will now give them an even harder problem. He explains that this is a problem he and his colleagues have been working on for the past 2 years, and now it is written on the board. Meanwhile, Will leaves the police station and tells his friends that his court date is next week. In the evening, he goes to his job and sees another easy problem written on the board. He quickly starts solving it so no one will see. Just then, Professor Lambeau comes out of his office and sees Will writing on the board. He asks angrily, "What are you doing here?" Will immediately apologizes and steps back. The professor thinks this kid is just a mischief maker writing nonsense on the board. He tries to grab him, but Will quickly disappears. When the professor looks at the board again, he realizes the correct answer is written there. He is stunned. After work that evening, Will goes to the bar with his friends and tells them he was fired from his job. Now he won't be able to go into the university and solve problems. His friends ask why he was fired, and Will jokes, "The management just made some changes." The next day, Professor Lambeau decides he will find this mysterious genius. He goes straight to the janitor's office and asks for the name of a young man working there. But the staff there think the professor has come to complain about the cleaning, so they don't immediately give Will's name. A little later, it is revealed that Will was not cleaning at MIT by choice. It was community service given to him by the court. Now the day to hear his case had arrived. Professor Lambeau is also present in the court. Everyone sees that Will is defending his own case. He shows so much knowledge about law and society that everyone is surprised. However, he has many old cases against him, so the judge sends him to jail and sets the bail at $50,000. Sometime later, Professor Lambeau visits Will in jail. He tells him that the judge has given him permission to be released from jail, but with 2 conditions. First, Will must study with the professor every week. Second, he must see a psychological doctor every week to help with his anger and criminal habits. Will feels he doesn't need a psychological doctor, but he accepts the condition to be free. After leaving jail, he starts studying with the professor and easily solves the most difficult problems. The professor is very impressed by his ability, but the therapy is not so easy. The professor brings in several different doctors, but none of them can handle Will. The first doctor is scared because Will mocks a book he wrote. Will says he read his book in one night and it wasn't very special. Hearing this, the doctor angrily leaves the session. The second psychological doctor tries a different approach to handle Will. He tries to put him to sleep by hypnotizing him, but this method also doesn't work. Seeing this, Professor Lambeau almost gives up. Then he remembers his old college friend, Sean McGuire, who is now a psychological doctor. The professor goes to Sean's office, explains Will's case, and invites him to discuss it at a restaurant. Sean initially refuses because his schedule is very busy, but Professor Lambeau explains that Will is no ordinary boy, but a genius of a different level. He compares him to a famous math scholar who made great discoveries without any formal education. Hearing this, Sean finally agrees to meet Will. In the first session, Will, as always, tries to annoy the doctor with rudeness and jokes. He even makes fun of a painting Sean made, saying it's completely worthless. Sean doesn't get angry at this and remains calm, but when Will mocks his personal life and his wife, Sean becomes furious. He tells Will in a harsh tone, "If you mention my wife's name again, I will destroy you," and ends the session. Later, when Professor Lambeau sees that Sean is upset, he tells him he can quit the case if he wants, but Sean clearly says he will definitely meet Will again next week. After the first session, Sean keeps thinking about Will's words, especially when he mentioned his wife. These memories make him feel lonely. Meanwhile, Will makes a little progress in his life. He goes on a date with the girl he met at the bar, Skylar. Skylar tells him that she inherited a lot of money from her father and is thinking of enrolling in Stanford University. They have a great evening and finally kiss in a diner. Now comes the second therapy session. This time, Sean takes Will not to his office, but to a park bench. As soon as Will starts his usual joking and taunting, Sean stops him. Sean says he has thought a lot about Will's words and now he has something to say. He explains that even though Will is highly educated and very smart, he knows nothing about real life. He can know about every artist in the world from books, but he has never left Boston to see their real artwork. He can recite books written about war, but he has never seen a battlefield. He can recite love poems, but he has never truly loved a woman or completely opened up to her. And most importantly, until Will talks about his own pain, no one can understand the pain of being an orphan. Sean says all this cannot be learned from books. Life itself teaches the real lessons. In the next session, Will remains silent the whole time, sitting quietly because Sean knows Will is just testing him and he is right. In the very next session, Will breaks his silence and tells Sean a dirty joke. After this, they start having light-hearted conversations. Will talks about his date. Sean asks if he will meet Skylar again. Will then admits a truth. He says maybe not, because he doesn't want Skylar's perfect image of him to be broken. But Sean explains to him that Will is actually afraid of the perfect image he has created of himself, not the girl's. In real relationships, you have to accept each other's flaws and habits. Sean tells the story of his wife who recently passed away due to cancer. He says he misses her small habits and tantrums the most. True love and closeness only happen when we accept a person with their flaws. For the first time, Will listens carefully. On the other side, Will goes to meet Skylar at her dorm. Skylar is surprised because Will hadn't called her for a long time, but she agrees to go out. The next day, they go to watch dog races and have a very good time. Skylar asks Will where he grew up. Will hides the truth and jokes that he has 12 older brothers. Skylar laughs and says it's a lie, but Will makes the matter more fun by swearing it's true. He even has to promise that he will introduce Skylar to his family soon. After this, Skylar asks Will how someone knows if they have found their true partner. This question sticks in Will's mind, and he asks Sean the same question the next day. Sean smiles and says he knew at first sight just by looking at his wife. Then he tells a story. Once, he got tickets to a very rare baseball game, but he skipped the game because he met a beautiful girl at a bar that same day. Sean says he still doesn't regret missing that game. Skylar insists repeatedly that Will introduce her to his real family, but Will still avoids telling the truth, so he decides to introduce her to his friends at least. Skylar easily fits in with the group. She laughs, jokes, and drinks beer with everyone, but at the end of the night, a comment from Chucky spoils Will's mood. On the other side, Professor Lambo meets Sean at a diner and asks questions about Will's therapy. Lambo is not really concerned about Will's past. He just wants to know what Will will do next under his guidance. To this, Sean says he will not pressure Will because Will has to decide what he wants in life. Hearing this, Lambo gets angry and says he has already introduced Will to very important people, but he doesn't know that Will's friend Chucky showed up to meet those people in Will's place. There, Chucky demands money and spoils the entire deal with his bad behavior. On the other side, Will and Skylar spend a romantic evening and their relationship deepens. Skylar asks Will a direct question at her house. She says she has to go to California to study at Stanford and wants Will to come with her, but Will immediately refuses and starts making excuses. Skylar explains to him that he is just stuck in his small world where he faces no challenges and is afraid of new things. And hearing this, Will snaps. He thinks Skylar is just making fun of him and he is just a time pass for her because he is poor. Skylar asks in surprise why he is so worried about money. She cries and says that if she had to choose between her rich father's wealth and her father, she would always choose her father, not the money. Skylar clearly says that she is scared too, but at least she is honest with Will. Will argues again. Then Skylar remembers that Will had repeatedly told the false story about his 12 brothers. Now Will completely loses his temper and yells. He says that Skylar would never want to know his real life because the truth is that he is an orphan and people treated him very badly as a child. Skylar, with tears in her eyes, assures him that she wants to know everything about him, no matter how painful it is. Finally, Skylar tells him how she feels. She loves him, but Will's heart is already closed, and he says in a cold voice, "I don't love you." After this, Will meets Professor Lambo. Lambo is angry because Will's actions messed up the meeting with the business partners. Will bursts out in anger and says he is no longer sure if he even wants this academic career. Now the conversation between Will and Professor Lambo becomes even more difficult because Will's smart remarks put Lambo down. Lambo says he expected at least some gratitude from Will. They argue and Will leaves angrily. Sometime later, Will is called for a job at the National Security Agency, NSA, where he is promised a brilliant career, but Will flat out refuses. He says he doesn't want to ruin an ordinary person's life just for political games. After this, Will meets Sean again. Sean asks why he turned down the NSA job. Will laughs and says, "I'm waiting for a better opportunity." Sean, his psychological doctor, asks Will if he has any friends he can talk to honestly, or if he ever feels lonely. Instead of answering, Will starts listing the names of famous philosophers. Then Sean explains that real relationships can only be built with living people. Sean then asks what Will really wants if he is serious about his future. Will jokes that he doesn't mind laying bricks or becoming a shepherd. Sean understands that Will is just joking and running away from his own truth. Angrily, Sean throws him out of his office. Will is surprised why he was thrown out. Then Sean clearly says, "Because you're not answering honestly. You're just hiding your true self." While they are talking, Will asks, "You talk about your life partner, but where is your wife?" Sean quietly answers, answers she is no longer in this world. Time passes and Will calls Skylar, but Skylar has stopped waiting for him because Will never makes a firm decision. Skylar says, "I love you, take care," for the last time, and then she leaves for California. On the other side, Will starts working in construction with his friend Chucky in Boston. Meanwhile, Professor Lambo, talking on the phone, says that Will is no longer fulfilling his responsibility. If he reports to the court that Will is not attending sessions, Will go back to jail, and this time his mind will be clear too. During a break at work, Chucky asks Will what he's going to do next in life. Will jokes that he doesn't want to be a rat in a lab solving math problems. He wants to stay in Boston and have fun with his friends. But this time, Chucky openly scolds Will. He says Will is wasting his talent. Chucky even admits that every day he wishes that one day Will would leave his house and build his real life. Meanwhile, Lambo finds out that Will is no longer going to therapy with Sean either. Angrily, Lambo threatens Sean that he will tell the judge the whole truth and accuses Sean of pushing Will back towards crime. Sean tells Professor Lambo that he doesn't care if people laugh at him, but he cannot ignore Will's feelings. Sean explains that Lambo never accepted true love and has been alone his whole life. But Lambo is not willing to listen to him. He thinks Sean is jealous of his success. Hearing this, Sean is surprised and feels that Lambo is just arrogant. Sean explains that he only cares about Will's future and his true desires, while Lambo's pressure could make him fail. Then Lambo quietly leaves and leaves Will alone with Sean. Sean tells Will that his fight with Lambo is not personal, it is related to old issues. Then, changing the subject, Sean says he has prepared a report for the judge about Will. Will asks him if other patients like him have come to him. Then, for the first time, Sean shares his personal life and tells him that his father was an alcoholic who used to beat him a lot. He tells Will that what happened to him is not his fault. Initially, Will tries to avoid the conversation by joking, but then he suddenly breaks down and lets out his true feelings. Finally, everything becomes clear. His father was an alcoholic and used to beat him badly as a child. Will comes to Sean for his final session and tells him that he has decided to take a job at one of the companies suggested by Professor Lambo, and he is happy with this decision. Sean also says he has decided to travel the world a little and gives his number to Will as he leaves. In the evening, Will celebrates his birthday with his friends. His friends give him a car as a gift, which they built by combining old parts. Meanwhile, Professor Lambo comes to meet Sean. They both apologize to each other and then leave to have a drink at the bar together. On the other side, Chucky comes to pick up Will for work, as usual, but this time he sees that Will is not home. Chucky is very happy to see this, just as he always wished for in his dreams. Will had left a note for Sean. Sean reads it and finds out that Will quit the job and has gone to California to be with Skylar. In the note, Will writes the same line that Sean once told his friends when he decided to meet his future wife instead of going to the baseball game. And in this beautiful way, the story ends. This story teaches us that true victory in life is not achieved with a degree or a job, but by finding true love and recognizing one's true purpose.